In the movie version, you spot the gangster by the missing finger, by the scars, by the way he walks into the room like he owns it. Wall Street didn't find a finger. It found a form, a chain of companies. Clean names, clean stationery, clean signatures. And inside the paperwork that started circulating in 1991, one name kept surfacing: Susumu Ishii. Yakuza boss, bubble-era kingpin, a man tied to a network, moving money across borders through fronts. While America tried to work out who it was really dealing with, Tony Montana needed a mountain of cocaine to scare the world into line. Ishii didn't need drugs. He needed a position, a stake, a seat at the table. And once he got it, the table started shaking. If Wall Street runs on disclosure, how did a Yakuza-linked machine get close enough to touch US stocks at all? Forget the gangster goes legit storyline. That's Hollywood comfort food. The real thing is quieter. Metal, ink, fear. Japan's bubble economy. Everything goes up. Stocks, land, confidence. And when everything goes up, everyone gets sloppy. Bankers, brokers, executives, regulators. That's when Ishii climbs, not with a gun on the desk, with something that looks harmless. A golf course development, Iwama Country Club. Membership money, big money. Collected fast, documented as a mechanism Ishii used to raise enormous sums, tens of billions of yen, while major firms stayed close enough to benefit, far enough to deny. In the movie version, the suit realizes he's dealing with the underworld and pulls back, calls security, makes a speech about principle. In the bubble, principle was a luxury. The chart was the only god that mattered. Cheap credit, big bets, rates cut in the mid-80s, money loose. Then tightening at the end of the decade as the market overheats. But by then, the machine is already running. And Ishii understands something movie gangsters never learn. You don't have to threaten everyone. You just have to become useful. This is the brutality of economic Yakuza. Not blood on the sidewalk, blood in the balance sheet. Pressure delivered in meetings, in quiet calls, in the way a deal suddenly needs to happen. By the end of 1989, Ishii amasses a massive stock position in a major rail and property company. 29 million shares, about 26%. That's not dabbling, that's leverage. That's a grip on a corporate throat. On paper, Tony Montana storms into rooms and shouts. Ishii doesn't need to shout. When you hold a block like that, the room shouts for you. And then the bubble cracks. January 1990 hits like a cold slap. The market turns. Reality returns. Hollywood shows the gangster losing a gunfight. The real fight is arithmetic. The stake becomes a trap. Moves follow that resemble greenmail tactics, trying to force a buyback at a better price. Not cinematic, clinical. A corporate squeeze with an underworld shadow behind it. And it doesn't work, because the bubble doesn't care who you are. If Ishii's power was built on a market that only goes up, what happens when it starts falling and the world starts looking for a scapegoat? In the movie version, the gangster goes global with champagne and bodyguards. Ishii goes global with paperwork, fronts, corporate shells, clean logos, neutral names. By 1991, reporting tied to SEC documents, and Japanese media describes a chain. West Tsusho, tied to Hokusho Sangyo, and Hokusho described as believed to be controlled by Ishii. That's the chain that made Wall Street stop laughing. Tony Montana needs contraband to intimidate the world. Ishii needs a front company that can sign on the dotted line, because once the line is signed, the doors open themselves. And then comes the detail that should have detonated louder than it did. The Bush link. Not a rumor, not a whisper. Prescott Bush, US consultant, and the sitting president's brother, recommended investments, received finder's fees, and guaranteed part of a deal tied to West Tsusho's activity. That's not a gangster brushing shoulders with a celebrity. That's proximity to the family in the White House. Touching the same paper, Hollywood teaches you rules. Gangsters are outlaws. Presidents are law. Reality doesn't separate them that neatly. Money doesn't ask for morals. It asks for introductions. West Tsusho buys 1 million shares of Quantum Access in Houston, priced in the low millions. West Tsusho puts millions into a New York firm connected to Asian trade services, asset management, international financing, and settlement. Not takeover numbers, not domination, something more revealing, proof that the pipeline works. And while US headlines stare at the novelty, Yakuza money in America, Japan is imploding from the inside. Because Ishii isn't just touching the market, he's touching the prestige layer. The scandal pressure hits the top. Executives resign, public outrage spikes. In the movie version, resignations are justice. In real life, resignations are insulation. And here's the detail that matters. Because folklore loves to warp names, people retell it as West Indies companies, exotic, offshore, convenient. The documented name in major reporting is West Tsusho. Then the clock runs out. Late May 1991, police raid Hokusho Sangyo. Days later, police raid Ishii's home, looking for documents tied to the overseas investments. When police come for paperwork, the story has escaped the underworld. It has entered the state. If the US side had filings, fees, and a presidential family connection, why didn't it explode into the kind of scandal that ends careers in Washington? The bubble doesn't pop like a balloon. It suffocates, credit tightens, optimism bleeds out, debt becomes visible, bad loans, backroom protections, loss cover-ups. The same economy that inflated Ishii now exposes him. His giant position, so powerful at the peak, turns poisonous as the market falls. You can't threaten a falling chart. You can't intimidate gravity. Hollywood gives you a shootout, a betrayal, a dramatic execution. Documented reality is colder. Institutional panic, public humiliation, top-level resignations. Because the ugliest truth is this: the underworld didn't break into the system. The system kept letting it in because it was profitable. Then the timeline hits a hard stop. September 3rd, 1991. Susumu Ishii dies. No final courtroom scene. No victory lap. The man disappears. The pipeline remains. Japan spends the next decades living inside the aftertaste. The bubble becomes the lost decade story, then longer than a decade. While the country tries to rebuild trust in money, in markets, in institutions, Ishii becomes a symbol people can point at, godfather of the bubble. Not because one man caused it, because his case concentrates the rot into one face. If Ishii died in 1991, what survives him? His organization? His methods? Or the appetite that made him possible? The movie version ends with closure, a lesson, a neat moral. Real life doesn't do neat. The stance hardens in the early 1990s. Denials get louder. Distance becomes a performance, but the method doesn't go away. Fronts, layers, respectability on rental terms. Tony Montana is loud. He wants you to see him. Economic Yakuza don't need visibility. They need access. Access to credit, access to brokers, access to introductions. And the Bush detail is the coldest proof of what access looks like. Not a twist, a warning label. If a Yakuza-linked acquisition chain can run through fees and guarantees involving a presidential brother, then the border between respectable and criminal isn't a wall. It's a curtain, and curtains are easy to pull aside if you have the right hands on the rope. The bubble taught institutions a habit they never fully unlearned. When money is flowing, nobody asks hard questions. When scandal breaks, people resign. When the noise fades, the machine keeps running. Decades later, the ghost number returns. In February 2024, Japan's Nikkei climbs above its 1989 peak, closing past the old record after 34 years. A number reclaimed, not a memory erased. No moral, no comfort, just the final frame. The mafia didn't disappear, they upgraded. Better lawyers, better fronts, better suits, and the same question hanging in the air like smoke. When the next Ishii shows up, will the paperwork catch him or protect him?